Welcome, everybody, to our Sunday Truth Talk. My name is Jona Bryndis, your living True Self Radio from Europe, live here to discuss the aspects of growth with you, personal growth, spiritual growth, and especially growing within a relationship. What happens when one of us goes through some kind of transformation and the other doesn't, and how to handle this. This is one of the most common questions I receive here as energy healer, as energy coach, and I'd love to discuss this with you today. So hello everybody, I see you in Canada, I see you in Arizona, in Indiana. I don't know where you guys are all from. Let me know where you guys are from. And be prepared to have questions here, to talk with me about some of the aspects of growth that you are experiencing as challenging. So what is growth really? Have you thought about that? I mean, we all get older and we all mature, and obviously today I'm a different person than I was yesterday. And what is the problem with that? I mean, yes, we have commitments, we have tasks, we sign up to be in a certain way, maybe in our job, in our relationship. And what happens when we evolve out of this person? Personally, I went through several of these stages, and if you are younger, if you're a millennial or Generation Z person right now, it is very likely that you experience several of these big transformations in your life. They say, statistics say, that you guys are going to change your profession on average 5 times in your lifetime. All right, if you're a little older like me, and I guess I was a bit of a pioneer there, I actually went through three major career changes, and with it also 3 big transformations in my relationship lives. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but when we go through something that, and I don't want to judge this at all, that changes us, it's always difficult to go back to these things that we have committed to prior to the change. And many of us have issues with communicating this because it feels like you were phony before, or you're not sticking up to your promises, or you're having you made false promises. And sometimes we also have a problem with being afraid of leaving others behind. That's something that I've encountered a few times. I stayed in relationships longer than I normally would have, because I felt obliged, or I felt like I had made a promise, or I felt like I couldn't leave this person. There are some aspects of codependency and such things that I want to discuss with you in this context here as well. But first, I want to look at what really signifies growth. How do we know that we are growing? And how can we navigate through this as an individual? And then, of course, how this might affect our relationship, and what these things are that we want to look at, what these red flags are if we feel like we cannot grow. It's good to have you guys here. You see, it's windy outside. You see the darkening sky behind me in this beautiful full moon night here today. Yeah, learning from mistakes, Svetlana. I think that is probably the very best description, although I would like to make an amendment here, namely that mistakes are really only relative, right? I mean, if we really look at, our natural tendency to wanting to grow, to wanting to evolve, this is part of our divine nature. We can't really stop growing, okay? We can't prevent growth. But if we look at that, are those things that we learn, like starting from burning our hand on the stove, or falling down or going out of balance because we didn't really know what we needed? Are those really mistakes? Or are those simply learning experiences? I like to call them learning experiences because whether or not something appears to be a mistake is very relative to the situation that we're in. Just take things with emotional expression, for instance. I mean, obviously, when we hurt other people, or when we hurt ourselves, or when we violate the golden rules, say, like you don't do to others what you don't want to be done to yourself, then I would say, under all considerations, and no matter what belief system and how you regard yourself, what image you have of yourself, that would probably count as a mistake, because you carry this with you, and it often also creates karma that later needs to be undone, that needs to be worked through. Okay, but if you really look at the things that you experience in your life that appear to be a mistake today, a lot of these later just were experiences. They weren't actually mistakes. And if I look back at my personal life, I can tell you that I am happy and glad for all the mistakes that I did. Not only did they allow me to find out what boundaries are, what is good for me and what isn't good for me, but if I hadn't made those mistakes, I don't think I would be the person that I am today. And one way to do this sort of inner reflection is to look back at your life and to ask yourself if you really had the ability to undo something, to change something in the past. We don't, at least not the obvious way. But if we had this opportunity, would you really change something? Because if you look at the connectivity of it all and how everything fits into the next, all right, would you really be here if you, hadn't experienced these mistakes? All right, so that's a reframing of some of our value system that comes with time. When we are younger, we are so conditioned to just do the right thing, okay? And oftentimes whatever we experience as the right thing comes from the expectations that are coming from the outside. So it's not actually the right thing, it's just the most conformist thing to do when we try to live up to other people's expectations. It isn't really until we have all these different experiences that show us what works for us and what doesn't, that we begin to understand what is right and what is wrong for us. And when we continue on our journey, we later even recognize that there isn't really anything right or wrong. There only is true or not true. Now, is this true to me or is this not true to me? And this is also the moment, and I'm, sort of reckoning. I reckon that most of you guys are at this point in your life where you understand yourself as a being that came here to individuate, that came here to develop your very unique talents and skills and to bring them into the world, to share them with others. But at the same time, you also came with a certain set of preferences, a certain set of boundaries, a certain set of experiences, conditionings, or sometimes also trauma that set you up for a specific journey. Like many of us, most of our lives really, if we are unaware, but if we reflect a little on this, can find out that most of what drives us, what motivates us, is actually something that comes from the pain of the past, is something that we have experienced, say, as a young child or a teenager, something that we've experienced as extremely traumatic or embarrassing or shameful, and we don't ever want to experience this again. Even as a parent, for instance, or a relationship partner, we've experienced something with our own parents or in a relationship with certain partners, and we just simply don't want to experience this again. But here as well, this cannot necessarily be called a mistake if you think about it, because, we all needed these experiences to navigate, to form our own roadmap here in this lifetime, and to know what we want, and to know what we need, and to know what we truly aspire to. Hi there, Sandy, I see you. So, going back to growth, all right, what growth actually is for us as individuals, it means that we have accepted all the things that we have learned, okay? So, no matter how old we are, we've accepted them as learning experiences, we've accepted them as part of us, we've integrated them. And we've also accepted maybe some of our limitations. Okay, so things that are maybe not as invincible or as grandiose as we thought we were when we were 20. Okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you think about it, a lot of the problems that we have with other people come from, this attitude, there's no tomorrow. Okay, so this might actually be a sign of maturity, okay, to accept your own shortcomings and, to see that there are limits to things. But in the larger scope of things, growth really is just being able to maneuver through life with ease and balance, to be in the flow, but also to be your own self-master, not to just sort of hang in there and wait till something happens, or, wait till your partner does something, or till you can escape a certain situation. Those would all be motivated by the past, and closer to something that I would call a mistake, because it wastes our time, it wastes our energy. And last Sunday we talked about life force and the 12 most common life force wasters, okay? And out of this sort of deeper look into what growth really is, not just growth in the sense of improving ourselves and getting better and, overcoming our self-conscious self-worth issue or not feeling good enough. I'm not talking about that kind of growth. That still comes from the pain of the past, guys. That's still aligned to pain or fear. I'm talking about the growth that makes you stronger, that makes your life become more aligned to you, where you are an active participant in your life, where you are sitting in the driver's seat and you are going into the direction that you've determined. It's kind of like a leadership thing, if you will. You know how people say in in the corporate world that there are only leaders and followers, and I have to agree with this, but not in this judgmental way, but in the way that we are either in this leadership role with our own life, or we are in a follower role. And there are very intrinsic things to that. Okay, so we can be a fighter, and fighting against something, as we've discussed last week, can also be a waste of energy. We're fighting against something, and therefore we're not actually in control. So many of us who are very masculine in their nature, who have a lot of performance codes, as we call this, have a really strong sense for competing with others and becoming better and doing harder, which is a sort of a slight sort of emphasis on masculine energies in you, and we use this energy to force our way through in life. This does not necessarily bring us into this self-mastery place, into this driver's seat that I've talked about. And then those of us who have all these ideas that life is sort of a continual display of mystical things, and that all we need to do is to wait for the right signs and the right synchronicities, and we don't really have to do anything and make no decisions. We don't really need to take responsibility for anything. Those of us are probably more aligned to our feminine energies. Both examples here as an as a sign of imbalance, because both can bring us into an either sort of hyperactive, overactive, forceful place, or into a passive place. Both can be very toxic in their nature. For ourselves, in our journey, we can feel like life is passing us by. We're just like sort of surviving life, or life is a struggle and we're constantly fighting. Yes, these are both things that create imbalance, a lot of stress, and often also, things such as anxiety or depression, because we never feel we're getting anywhere. So growth is really a subjective experience of sort of following your own greater footsteps, growing into this higher expression of yourself, of your true self. And here now, with truth comes a new definition, really, of growth itself, and right or wrong, or good or bad. And that is that we are now looking at things more in the sense of what is true to me, what is conducive for me or for my journey, and what helps me grow, what is in alignment with this true divine nature in me that wants me to excel, that wants me to thrive. Okay, and this is here, this what this truth talk today is about, to really find this sweet spot in our life where self-mastery is no longer sort of a stressful striving and thriving, for the sake of being better or performing better, or for being more productive, or for getting admired more, or for having more friends, or whatever it is that, money that comes up with, what we believe, what we could get through this. But where growth turns into becoming more true to ourselves. And becoming more true to ourselves here as a spiritual or a metaphysical teacher is probably the best guarantee for you to actually ever feel something like fulfillment and joy and happiness in your life. So when you look at what is true to me versus, okay, I'm doing this because I have to do this, or I'm doing this because, I'm still sort of caught in my inner child stuff and so forth, and I know it is not true to me, but I have to do this as a compromise. You can still be in this place, this self-mastery place. But if you are doing things without you being aware that they are actually pointing backwards, that they're pointing into the past, well, then you might actually not be true to yourself. And when it comes to us as a soul self here, that really wants to come to an expression, and also our relationships that help us to grow, that help us to experience all these learning, the learning experience that is needed. Okay, then truth is really what you want to look at. And I can only, how can I say, motivate you or recommend to you guys to really focus on this. If you are at a place in your life where you're not sure where to go, okay, then the safest place for you is going to be what is really true to me. Okay, whether it's in your career, do you really want this? Okay, I'm only doing this for money. Okay, how can I make money in a different way that is more true to me? This relationship, is this really true love, right? Or is this a dependent love? Is this a love that requires a lot of control? Is this a love that has a lot of manipulation? Is there a lot of contempt and withholding in this relationship? Is this really true to me? Is this really how I want my relationship? But also in my family, like maybe if I'm a parent, do I really want to be this kind of parent? Do I really want to be this kind of friend? These are the things that really steer us into this higher expression of who we are. Because when we ask for whether they are true to us or not, then we automatically have to go deeper. We automatically have to ask our heart. And I've talked about heart warrior stuff in the past here, and some of you are in our heart warrior program, but it's really a term that shows how somebody can really learn to stand by their own truth, to stand in their own heart with a sort of a warrior attitude, but without fighting against anybody else or oneself for that matter, because many of you, they're not really in fight with somebody else. They're actually more in fight and battle with yourself. So knowing that you are in truth, knowing that you are growing into your higher expression, I would say, is the easiest to find out if your life feels in peace, if your life feels elated, if you wake up in the morning and you're really excited about this day, where your life force is pushing forward, pushing through. You don't even have to have plans or any kind of big mission or anything, but where you feel that there's something in you that really, really wants to come to an expression. That is when you are on this path, on this road that shows you where your truth is. And when you're not in truth, then you will find your life more as a burden. You'll wake up in anxiety, afraid of what is ahead of you. You are probably more likely to feel or think about all the things that you want to avoid. Okay, you maneuver through your life basically, in order to either cover something up or try to stay hidden, withhold yourself, all right, so that there's no conflict or so that there is no embarrassment. Those are signs that you're not living your life in your highest expression, that you're not living in your truth, especially when there's dependencies of any kind involved in this. Because when you are dependent on an audience, when you're dependent on a partner, when you're dependent on money, when you're dependent on a certain lifestyle, dependent on a certain type of car or whatever, then you're not actually free. And that is the other aspect here that comes with truth, and that is freedom. And that's why I've called this self-mastery earlier, or this leadership, that you actually able to feel that you are in the driver's seat of your life, because that feeling gives you a lot of freedom. Okay, you can maneuver through whatever roadblock or a hump on your road, or a challenge that comes your way, with your full present moment awareness, because you are not afraid of, you don't have to avoid anything, you don't have to hide anything, you can stand your ground. You know in your heart that whatever comes your way, you can handle it when it arises. You don't even have to think a lot about this ahead of time, because you know that you have the power to make your stance when it's time. And for this, you really need to be able to feel things in the present moment. And that is, of course, what mindfulness, soulfulness, and gracefulness, what they help you with, because they allow you to train this, how to stand in your heart at all times. And when you stand in your heart at all times, and again, you don't take this literal, guys. And by the way, thank you so much for all your hearts. It's so motivating. And that makes it really easy for me to stand in my heart. Actually, seeing those hearts makes it easy to just breathe into it. When you stand in your heart, okay, then you don't need to be any different than you are. So, not being in truth really means that you feel for whatever reason that you cannot be who you are, because you think you're not good enough, or because you have to be anybody else. And this is where this daily practice of breathing into your heart, taking time for yourself, taking time for your being, away from your doing, maybe half an hour or an hour a day, okay, where you don't even have to meditate. It's not important that you put this chore list into your being time. I'd much rather see you guys scheduling into your agenda one time, just being, just no phone, no nothing, not even music or anything. I mean, you can join nature. Nature is always the best reminder on truth and freedom and heart, because everything in nature is nourished by this, this light, this life force energy that drives us into growth. All right, so we cannot prevent growth unless we really go against it. And this is the part here, guys, that is a bit difficult to swallow. I see this with children a lot. When you look at these 1-year-olds or 2-year-olds, and the way they express their life force. Okay, and I'm not going to talk a lot about parenting here, but it takes a lot to crush that soul. It takes a lot to crush that life force in a 2-year-old. That's a lot of effort, guys. Think about this. And I'm not saying that we're all bad parents, Of course, we're all, to a degree, insufficient parents on whatever level, but it's not that we don't try. It's just that by trying to redirect this life force into the plan that we have for our children, we are maneuvering them away from their own soul self's plan. And that is actually a really big damper for the child's life force and how this child is ever going to individuate itself. All right, so it's just a reminder here for us, that when we have issues with our children, that we understand that they have their own soul plan. And we don't necessarily know what the soul plan is. So sometimes it's really important that we allow our children to make mistakes, and that we give them this space to learn, all right, to grow, to individuate, to develop this leadership with themselves, obviously in a controlled environment, depending on the age group, and with making them feel safe emotionally, physically, of course, and also intellectually and mentally. You see, it's very windy here, so sorry for all this hair stuff here. So when it comes to our relationships, and this was the emphasis that I wanted to put on this truth talk here today, all right, a lot of people have issues with growing out of a relationship and being afraid of leaving somebody behind, feeling guilty, or simply not daring to do a step that might jeopardize the relationship. So as a energy therapist, I can tell you that when couples come into my practice, and I do these Heart Warrior programs also for couples, that one of the things that I look at is the way they communicate with another, the way they are able to really pinpoint their own needs, their own wants, and then communicate them. If there is a genuine respect and genuine honoring of the other person's needs, then and both have a similar alignment as to where they want to go, then a relationship can pretty much go through anything. But if there's a lot of withholding, if there's a lot of resentment, if there's a lot of repression, emotional repression, or dependencies, all right, then the freedom to grow as individual and as couple is very restricted. And it becomes very difficult, for the individuals here to be true to themselves. And so relationships where one or both, try to pretend they're different from who they are, and are unable to communicate this with their partners, they have very little chance to last through, like say the life's challenges, such as, maybe moving together or having children together, or, building some kind of lifestyle together. Okay, so there are challenges that come with this that require us to be able to communicate these things. And this starts really with our personal growth and taking this seriously, taking our own needs and our own wants seriously, knowing where we want to go. See, the problem in relationships is often that when we come together, we think we know where we want to go. We have some kind of idea, some kind of conditioning. And, as we then, get through the initiation of the relationship, okay, the infatuation phase and so forth, and we, get through the, like, say, first 2 years, and start refocusing on our own growth, that's typically when relationships run into the first issue. And that is, how much space can we give another while still being true to ourselves and to the other? And here, of course, a lot of this has to do with how we communicate this. The best way to communicate that you need time for yourself is to really have this, understanding, almost like a non-brainer self-understanding, that you are a better partner when you have enough time for yourself, when your needs are met, and when you feel balanced, and when your life is a struggle, or your day, or whatever, then it's natural that you cannot fully be present for the relationship, for the partner. So what I call a non-brainer here is really what most of us still have to learn. And this doesn't even include sort of fancy spiritual growth, okay? This is just on a very fundamental level. If we don't know how to juggle this with ourself and relationship with ourself, then we are actually not really prepared for a happy and lasting relationship. So growth as individual forms the foundation for the growth of our relationship, and also the growth in our relationship. So growth within a relationship is then something that both need to want. Okay, and this is where you got to understand here where the friction in relationships arises, also the manipulation. There can be competition, there can be comparing, there can be manipulation, there can be a lot of withholding, there can be resentments, there can be things as simple as, when you have children, where the caretaker of the children, mostly the female, but it's not anymore, stays home, takes care of the raising the children, while, like, say, the other one goes and works or makes career, and where this has to be brought back into balance. Those things need to be communicated, okay? When I say want growth, I don't mean like that you suddenly wake up and say, oh, no, I want to grow too. No, it's you always grow. It's your divine nature. It's your divine right to grow. In fact, like I've said, if you try to prevent yourself from growing, you're actually going against your own nature. And if you have the feeling that your partner has a problem with you growing, or if you know that your partner has a problem with you growing, then you're looking at a problem, okay? Because if your relationship does not allow the most natural maturing process that that we all come with, all right, then you automatically creating something that is untrue, that is not true anymore. And here is where a lot of us get stuck. Okay, the stagnation in relationships, the hiding, the withholding, the repressing, out of fear that we lose the partner, or out of fear that they find out that we're doing things that they disagree with. And here, guys, I mean, this is a big part of my practice as energy therapist. There are simple things that we can do to grow better in our relationship, with our relationship, and through our relationship. Because let's not forget, a relationship is also a wonderful vehicle for growth. And I don't know if I would be, able to express myself in this way today if I hadn't given myself the freedom to grow through my relationships, with all the trauma and with all the difficulties that I've experienced in my relationship career, if you will. Because in relationship with others, we receive something that is essential and instrumental for growth, and that is feedback. Remember how nature, divine nature, grows through feedback and correction. We need correction, guys. And so this idea of spiritually growing on a mountaintop without any disturbance, and other people, sort of just serving, the food and washing your clothes and so forth, might not be that realistic of an expectation or even goal to strive for. Because if unless you go and, devote your life to a monastery, to like some kind of, a practice where that is part of your journey. But if you have a normal 3D life, okay, where you have children and you have hobbies and you want to travel and you want to live and see countries and whatnot, all right, then it's not that realistic, okay, that you're going to be able to do this growth on your own. So we all have to find this balance between individuating but not separating. And I've talked about this before here a couple of weeks ago, where I said the times right now, this transition that we all go through right now is wonderful, because the last 20 years, 30 years, it was all about going within and reflecting and getting to a more conscious stance with ourselves. But now all of this wants to be expressed. Higher expression does not mean being better, competing better, or anything, happy all the time. No, higher expression means that you are able to hold this higher vibratory outlook on life, and this feeling where when you know that who you are, and you feel that you want to be who you are, and you even want to share this with others. So isolation, guys, is not the answer. We are, as humans, all designed to learn through another. And there's some keywords, obviously, like neuroplasticity and mirror neurons and so forth, where that clearly show that we learn the best in relationship with others through this feedback that we get from the outside. Okay, so what are some of these things here on these levels that I typically break our own well-being and our goal, our roadmap, healing roadmap, if you will, apart? First of all, is the physical aspect. So we all have a need to physically be with someone, and I'm not even talking about sexuality. I'm talking about the need for touching, the need for belonging, all right, to something, and to feel safe in that. So on the hierarchy of needs, that is the most fundamental one. And it is physical, because if we don't feel physically safe, if we cannot feel safe with a person on a physical level, then being truthful, or being in your heart, or trusting, and all these other things, being compassionate, empathetic, and so forth, are rarely possible. So therefore, we need to make sure that we have the right priorities here, and physical attraction, physical safety, physical needs are at the core of it. So if you are tired, okay, then you need to take care of your body. If you are hungry, you need to take care of your nourishment, okay? So this cannot compete with a relationship, okay? You always have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and especially in the sense of truth, okay, truthfulness, all right, because if you are hungry, if you are tired, if you are imbalanced physically, then chances are your communication isn't very good. You are not very open. You are maybe hasty, impatient, and so forth. So you understand what I'm saying, right? You always need to make sure that you are covering your most fundamental basic needs, but also in the relationship that you communicate this, all right? So we'll have another truth talk about positive communication in relationships one day, but it's really important to understand that your physical needs go first. They have to go first. So when we talk about self-care, self-love, self-awareness, body love, okay, understand that this is the foundation for growth, for yourself and also your relationship. Now then we have our emotional needs and our emotional attractions, and of course these change a little bit when we get older, just so you know. So all the stuff that we are attracted by or through when we're younger, this kind of calms down, and it's not that we are not no longer interested in emotional connection and so forth. On the contrary, we become more interested in deeper emotional experiences, and are therefore hopefully not as attracted to drama anymore. So this is something that comes with maturity. We learn to not waste our emotions on things that we cannot even control, or that people just sort of project onto us. The same with expectations. So there's a lot of difficulties for people in their relationships on the emotional expression side, all right, where we can get stuck sometimes, and also where there's a lot of manipulation. So any kind of push-pull emotionally, and this doesn't just apply to narcissistic personality types or people, who are empaths, but any kind of push-pull, where there's this feeling that you have to be in a certain way in order to get love from the other, or in order to get validation from the other. That's manipulation, guys. That is not based on truth. Okay, so emotionally, it's very important that we develop the sufficient literacy and vocabulary to understand what is actually respectful and what is honoring, and also what truthful boundaries are. Okay, so manipulating, push pull, dependencies, they're all based on untruths. No matter how you twist or turn it, it's never okay. It's not based on truth, guys. And if you are interested in a true relationship, in true love, okay, then it's not. Okay, you need to do something about this. Doesn't mean that the relationship is crap. It just means that you need to do something. You need to go into this hard warrior place where you say, hey, look, I know I've, accepted this before, maybe even enabling it for the longest time, but I'm now realizing that that's a no-go for me. That's not true for me. I don't care what I did in the past. I couldn't see this before. So I want to discuss this with you, how we can change this. I don't think it's okay to have a relationship that's based on manipulation or dependencies. I divorced my first husband because he did not allow me to read certain books. And at first I thought this was a joke. I literally thought this was a joke until I got to a place with this where he would give me a silent treatment, okay, for weeks sometimes, if I was reading certain authors' books. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I literally stood up, and said, dude, I love you and all, but that's not going to work for me. That is not how I see a relationship, okay? I'm not going to try to be a different person just to be with you, okay? Because if I have to be different in order to stay with you, all right, then I'm violating myself. And you cannot accept or expect from me that I'm violating myself. That is a boundary nobody can cross on no level, ever. Okay? Now, do we sometimes don't realize these things? Do we sometimes enable them? Do we sometimes play along? Do we play? Yes, we do. And that's part of the learning and the growth that I mentioned in the beginning, the maturity to see how we have been feeding into this, or how we have been tolerating things that we shouldn't have been tolerating. That wasn't a mistake. It was a needed learning experience for you to arrive here at this point that you can say, dude, this doesn't work for me. Okay. And if your partner then throws a tantrum, or punishes you in some way, well, then you have another proof, really, that this is not a true love. If the love that you are getting, the whatever, that love looks like, is conditional, if it depends on certain conditions, of you being in a certain way, you acting in a certain way, or sort of tolerating certain things, then you need to go a little deeper into your heart and ask yourself if you really want to live like this for the rest of your life. Because that is also part of growth and truth, that you feel that you could do this for the rest of your life, because it is so elating and so supporting you, okay, and providing you with nourishment and energy to do the things that you want to do, that you could imagine doing this for the rest of your life. Okay, this is really how you can feel this, guys. All right, and things that are not okay, you got to do something about this. If you accept any kind of manipulation or playing games or whatever, well, now you're in it, and now you're responsible for it. So growth then means to have the maturity to say, look, I didn't see this before, but I'm realizing now that this is not okay for me. I can't work this. So we need to work out a way that is maybe more mutual, or there, where there is more growth possible for both of us. Intellectually, the same thing. And there are sometimes times where, if you build a life together, like I say, in a financial life or lifestyle together, where, one of us, wants to go back to college, or wants to excel intellectually, where the other has to, make compromises here in order to maintain the lifestyle, that's okay. You just got to negotiate this. You got to, come up with a plan. Okay, for the next 5 years, you're going to go and excel intellectually, and do whatever, another master's degree or whatnot, while I'm making the money. And then when you're done with this, then it's my turn. Then I do this. The same, with maybe things that have to do with learning certain skill sets, learning languages, or traveling, or anything that is mentally or intellectually supporting you, or that you simply want to try. All right, we don't always have to do everything with our partners, that, right? A healthy, lasting, and happy relationship gives enough space to both partners, okay, to do this. Whether you run into issues, value issues with, like, say, faithfulness and stuff like that, all that has to do with your own integrity and communicating this. This is part of your fundamental needs. Okay, you're gonna have to ask or tell your partner that one of the needs for you to feel emotionally safe is, that you are committed to another exclusively. But some of you have relationships where that is not the case. So I don't want to give any values here to you. I just want to encourage you to communicate this a little more with your partner, and especially when there's changes. Now, looking at it now from that perspective, spiritual growth then becomes a piece of cake because it is the same thing. Now, what do you do if you have different spiritual beliefs? If one of you, is a Catholic and one of you is a Muslim, okay, well, you know what to do because you have to deal with these things right from the start. Okay, but if it is something about whether you believe in karma and the other one does not believe in karma, or nuances, whether you think you should do plant medicines, but the other one doesn't want to do that, or whether you think you have to meditate every day and the other one thinks that it's better to go into nature. It doesn't matter what these differences are. You can communicate them, and you can, and especially when spiritual growth is on your, sort of wish list, on your goal list, all right, understand that everybody has different needs and different roads to get there, different pathways to get there. Okay, and we have to honor that and respect that. That doesn't mean that we have to go separate ways. It just means that we have different ways and a different pace to get there. Okay, whether you trust that your partner will arrive there, or maybe that they will arrive where they need to arrive, or whether their true selves, will prompt them to do things. That is something that you need to negotiate with yourself. Because if you have this trust in yourself, and if you know that, on your way of, growth and coming into a higher expression here as a soul self, all right, you're gonna have these curveballs too, and you're gonna have true self promptings too that you sometimes need to follow. And as you understand how important these things are for yourself, you can also give that freedom to your partner without any conditions, without manipulation or anything involved. So ultimately, when this bringing ourselves into our highest expression, which then, basically leads to fulfillment in our relationships, but also in relationship with ourselves. When that comes to place, okay, then you no longer have the need to be anybody. You no longer have the need to project anything or to manipulate anything, because why would you? Why would you? If you've experienced true love with yourself only once, if you've experienced true love with another person, why would you want anything that is not truthful? I came to this place a little longer than 10 years ago, where I realized that my life and my life force is so precious that I do not want to agree to anything less than truth. I only want things that are true to me. I only want things that support me, that are life expressing, and that help me to grow into the highest expression that I can in this lifetime. And with that, my roadmap became very, very easy. If it's not true to me, I'm not doing it. If I have to make compromises, which I also have to do, just like all of us, I communicate them. But I also communicate that it is a compromise, and, with whatever the rules are that come with this. But there are certain things that I will just simply not tolerate, and that is when somebody, something forces me to betray myself. Because that is a karma that can take lifetimes to undo. So with this, guys, I want to close here, unless you have any comments or questions. I'm not seeing anything. Hang on, let me double check here. Oh, Sandy, I see this just now, your comment. Yes, you're too ready to connect. Yeah. Living in another country, all these things can all be overcome, guys. If the love is true, if you're true to yourself and your partner is true to yourself, you can overcome all this. These are these roadblocks. These are these things. This is no big deal. That is the thing that you learn, that life becomes so much easier when you are true to yourself, because you no longer have all the struggle. You can see what is needed at the right time. You'll say the right things at the right time, and you'll be at the right place at the right time when you are true to yourself. That's how easy that is. Thank you, guys. I gotta go. I love you. I want to see you next week again. And please, you need to interrupt me with your questions, because once I'm going, I'm going. I do this like 3, 4, 5 times a week here, and I'm so used to lecturing. Okay, that if you want me to respond to you, you need to yell at me. Okay, share these videos, encourage other people to go and learn how to connect with their true self. Maybe even become a heart warrior. If you're interested in my heart warrior program, then just contact me at Jona@transcodes.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye.